Ladies and gentlemen, this is Gail Morgan welcoming you to the Libertarian Counterpoint's Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. You've heard their point, now listen to the counterpoint.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. We are at June 23rd, 2021, and somehow managing to stay on our feet during this crazy trip through the Biden administration. But before we get into any of the stories of the day, let me introduce you to our panel. To start with, in our lower left-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. In our lower right-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. And we have a special guest this time in our upper right-hand corner, Brian Brady. He is a realtor in California and has the founder of the Republican Liberty Caucus of San Diego. My name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So the first topic we wanted to jump into was the issue of vaccines and intellectual property right. Right now, the Biden administration, for about the last month or so, has been looking to undercut the intellectual property of these vaccine makers. And so essentially, people are just, I guess, amazed, and they're crediting science as far as bringing along this vaccine in a period of essentially a year, which is one of the biggest breakthroughs we've ever had in addressing a disease in such a short period of time. And what a lot of people are giving credit to science, but one of the big reasons for this is also property rights. And I think a lot of people always miss these fine points that markets are really responsible for getting us a lot of the innovations we have in a lot of ways, and a lot of that comes down to property rights. So in getting this miracle, Biden kind of is showing that he doesn't quite understand how we got it. He's literally looking to undercut these property rights in order to give this, allow people to make this in the rest of the world without paying or making some kind of an arrangement with the big pharmaceutical companies to develop this. But personally, I have mixed feelings on intellectual property, but yeah, at least when this was started, this is kind of what the rules these companies were playing under, is that they were developing something that they could sell later on. So what kind of thoughts do you guys have on this? This is kind of a tricky issue, I think, for libertarians, but certainly a timely issue.
Well, I don't have mixed feelings about intellectual property, as you well know, Jason. But on this particular issue, there are some legitimate questions here that should be answered. Now, it is true, Joe Biden half of the times don't know. I don't think he knows that he's really his president to start with, but that's a little different discussion. But there's a legitimate issue here. Now, Operation Warp Speed was one of the most successful, probably the most successful private-public partnerships that we have seen in the United States, I think. Maybe even don't know, but success them that. It's a big. All of these pharmaceutical companies took billions of dollars from us, the taxpayers. Those dollars funded the research, funded the development of some of these vaccines. So who owned the intellectual property that comes out of it? Mm-hmm. Who owns it? Is it the pharmaceutical companies who actually did the development? Or do we as taxpayers own that intellectual property because we funded it? So there is a legitimate question here. Now, it is true that when these things were developed, it was developed with the understanding that the even though I don't think it is in law, but with the understanding that the pharmaceutical companies will own the intellectual property. But I don't think it is anywhere in law that they will. So I still think there's a legitimate question as to who actually owned the intellectual property on this. I really believe so.
Well, if we own the intellectual property, there's an F-18 Hornet that I think that I'm owed for the taxes that I've paid over my life to fund the military industrial complex. And so I want that F-18 in my name over at Montgomery Airport, and I will take it anytime.
So, Tim, you want Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman to send you a check every month?
Yeah, Boeing in this case, yes. No, actually, that's a whole subject right there, and I don't know what to think now that Leon brought that one up. I was confused because as I thought we were us taxpayers. Speaking of us taxpayers, I thought we were buying all the vaccines for all the people in all the places all throughout the world that can't afford it themselves. Never mind their intellectual property being intellectual rights being utilized by them to produce their own vaccines. I thought we were going to give it to them, but that's where I'm a little confused here with this whole new phenomenon of changing the rules of the game right in the of the thing. Apparently, let's play Monopoly, but we're going to switch rules in the middle of the game. I don't know. Brian, figure it out. What's going on here?
I like what Leon's saying here, and I'll tell you why. This time it's different, right? But I thought that the taxpayers were funding. I thought Operation Warp Speed was this one of a time phenomenon. If I'm the head of AstraZeneca, I gotta wonder if I don't just turn it over voluntarily, spike the football, and make it a PR coup. This one vaccine, apparently this is the biggest thing that hit us in a century. I just think there's a lot of good chance without using force for one of these companies to get a lot of good PR moving forward. But what you said, Tim, is kind of funny about the F-18. I just wonder why the drug companies. I understand why they want to recoup their costs, but I know the taxpayers funding a lot of that research. Yes. I think this is a chance just to put their name up in the history books and say, for the next 50 years, we stopped the great pandemic of 2020.
Sure. Yes.
Well, I would be curious to find out how much we're actually paying on all of this through our,
whatever we can print. Whatever we can print.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, Operation Lossy was hundreds of billions of dollars. I know that.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, as far as like, for instance, I have Kaiser, and I know, Leon, you have a different provider. But when I was going to get my vaccine, they just simply had they were trying to essentially corral everybody who has the plan to come and get it, and even to the point where they're even giving it out in some places, I think. But the point is that Kaiser, I don't think they're just being given the vaccine. I think they're literally having to pay for it, or maybe the government is, this is something maybe I'm getting a little far afield here because I'm not 100% sure. But I mean, the idea is that they're all paying for it. Yeah, exactly. Nobody knows.
No, but as far as I understand it, and I'm subject to correction, the government funded the research and they funded the distribution, and they are funding all those needles that go into people's arms is being funded by taxpayers.
Yeah.
So I still don't know where do we draw the line on this property rights on this particular issue. Okay, I'm a strong believer in property rights, and I believe property rights should always be protected. Jason, you and I have a disagreement on that, which is well known. But on this particular issue, all those dollars that were spent, I don't know who owned those property rights. I really don't know.
Are you siding with Leon?
I'm siding too. And Tim, to your point, I mean, national defense actually is an enumerated power under Article 1, Section 8. True. I'm pretty sure public health isn't. So, I mean, we're in this strange place, and I kind of side with Leon on this because it just seems like the taxpayers have funded everything from discovery to jab.
Yes.
By the way, for our listeners too, our invisible hand Gail has told us that the feds have paid all the docs and hospital distributors for the vaccine. So it sounds like the federal government is moving in I guess, mysterious ways or not so mysterious ways, but they're doing an awful lot behind the scenes.
And we all sound like a bunch of socialists right now, so let's keep at it.
Yeah, I'm almost getting the idea we're siding with Biden on this one.
Imagine that.
We're siding with Marx.
What next? What next? Well, the last time, Tim, I don't know if you remember, the last time I ended up siding with CNN on a particular issue. Right, so God, this is getting bad. This is getting really bad.
I'm feeling very uncomfortable right at the moment.
Well, but you know that there is one point though to this whole intellectual property, and so Leon, if we were to go the route where we say that in this case, literally, it's a mark of a success that we've had something develop so fast, and if the idea is that the government can just simply hand money to a company and make these things happen without property rights, then, you know, that really starts to beg the question, do we really need intellectual property rights at that point? So, you know, now I personally think they did it because they thought they had property rights and Biden just took them from them. but the point is, let's assume that that was the script. Then that would say that, hey, you know what, donations to a company, I don't think the government should be the one doing it. But anyways, yeah, so that's.
Well, I kind of like Brian's idea too of, you know, just because, I mean, how long can they milk a vaccine for a virus that is changing all the time anyway? I mean, eventually the vaccine's no longer going to be relevant. And so, you know, maybe they could give it up and call it a PR victory. Anyway, but we have other things to discuss, I'm sure. Because I'm feeling uncomfortable and I want to move on.
That's okay. I am too. You know, I don't like this topic. I don't like I don't like my answers.
Yeah.
We're scaring ourselves.
Can we talk about, talk about gun control?
I think
Knuckleheads of Fascism podcast.
Yes, I think we have a real problem when we don't have like our own answers to particular issues. You know.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, speaking of feeling uncomfortable, Joe Rogan was recently pretty uncomfortable when he heard Brian Stelter talk on his show about why podcasters like Brian Stelter have bigger markets than CNN and his show Reliable Sources. So I actually have an article here I was hoping to share the image of, so hopefully we can get that up here. And so the title here pretty much says it all. Joe Rogan savages Brian Stelter and his effing terrible show. And so this, of course, is Brian. I mean, this is Joe Rogan right here in this image, and this is Brian Stelter for anybody who's not with our beloved CNN network. Does that stand for the Castrati News Network? I'm not sure. Whatever. They've just been terrible over the last 4 years, and they've been selling Trump derangement essentially for the last 4 years. Now without Trump, they're finding it hard to sell Trump derangement, so their ratings are just tanking. They've lost like 80% of their audience since Biden became elected, and so they're lamenting this, and they're wondering why these other people have better shows, and Joe Rogan, you know, literally said, well, it's because your show is just terrible. And then he went on to say as well, talking about the Stelter's journalistic capabilities when he was recently interviewing Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary. He says, how about Brian Stelter talking to the press secretary saying, what are we doing wrong? What are we doing wrong? Like, hey, mother bleeper, you're supposed to be a journalist. I mean, you're supposed to be asking the administration what they're doing, not them evaluate you as a journalist. So anyways, that's just craziness out of the mainstream media. What do you guys think about all this?
Gee, I don't know. Well, first of all, I'm still thinking about being the F king, the king of F, wherever F is. If it's a kingdom, it's a monarchy, and I'm the king of F, then I'm the F king, I guess. But aside from that, I'm sorry. I really drifted. Yeah, it just goes to show these people, if they were doing good because of all this Trump mania that just went, I mean, that went into And I know people that just bought into that so hook, line, and sinker that I thought they were borderline psychotic. Honestly, I really did. It just got crazy. This hatred for one guy, and I still see it. I mean, there's people that are still holding on, and I imagine they don't get very many likes on Facebook anymore because people are just tired of it, and maybe even the majority of people are saying, let's just move on. We won, I guess. I guess they won. They think that's a whole nother story. Anyway, somebody else take me over because I'm floundering here.
Oh, Tim, also check your mic too. We're getting word from the back that maybe you're getting a little static on here.
Static from yes.
Yeah.
On mine?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. So
my trusty little Samsung mic is giving you issues.
Yes.
Seriously? Okay, let me
So as Tim deals with that, what do you guys think of this whole shift from the mainstream media to podcasting? I mean, this is kind of, what are they doing wrong?
So it's a brave new world and has been for years. When I was a young kid, we had 6 channels on a television. And when I was in high school, we got cable. And so now we had something like 36 channels, and that was amazing. And the internet came along, and it's a 10,000 channel television set.
Yes.
Little shows like this, anybody with a little bit of a brain and a little bit of bandwidth and who's willing to spend a little bit of money can build a show. And Joe Rogan has built up a podcast that is sticky and entertaining and exciting and authentic. And he has literally millions of people to the point that Spotify paid him something like $50 or $80 million in a 10-year contract to be solely on his platform. And the problem with Brian Stelter and the legacy media is they don't understand that they're so 1988, right? CNN knocked NBC and ABC off their perch. They got fat, dumb, and happy. And Rogan came along with long-form podcasts and said, not just young kids, by the way, people across the spectrum said, I'd rather listen to a 3-hour Joe Rogan interview than Brian Stelter lie to my face about what's going on in Washington, D.C. This is a repudiation of the mainstream media, and Stelter should hang his head in shame and start his own podcast and see if he can actually be authentic and stop lying to people and compete like the rest of us do in the private market.
Yep.
This is a major. I'm sorry, Tim. You want to say something? Go ahead.
No, I just said that was good.
Yes, I agree. But this is the problem, though, when we have these journalists masquerade, these democratic mouthpieces masquerading as journalists. This is what happens. Now, Brian Stelter is a well-known lefty. Fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't try to be a journalist. Don't try to tell me that you are objective journalist at the same time. Okay, please keep that to yourself. And I think, Brian, you're absolutely right. He should stop doing this masquerading and go find his own little podcast, and then he could publish his stuff, and then we see how much people will like it, the crap that he has to say every week. And it is
when people have to pay to listen to him, like they do for Rogan on Spotify, that will be the ultimate test.
Yes.
Because millions of people pay to listen to Rogan, and I can give you all the problems with Joe Rogan and what's wrong with him, but here's what works. He's authentic. He speaks the truth.
Yes.
And he's not scared to confront things, and he doesn't pretend. He doesn't pretend to be anything other than a bald MMA guy who also does comedy and is a little bit right-leaning, but not necessarily sure. If Stelter did that, he might be able to find a couple of dozen Trump derangement people to pay him $10 a month so we can listen to his podcast.
Hey, I'd love to see Stelter become a bald MMA guy.
Rogan and Stelter getting after it. I love it. Jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
Well, it is interesting though, because we're going through this evolution right now, it seems like, and I think people like Stelter are living off the past credibility of news networks where people assumed that they were literally hearing the facts in the news, and now things have devolved into these political echo chambers where the media has also at the same point been struggling to find ways to fund itself. And I think at some point I think it's almost like they become the plaything of rich people like Jeff Bezos, where it's just like they buy a paper, take a loss, but just, put a message out that's one they want to hear reflected back at them.
But there's a dangerous trend, though, even though you're right, Jason, you're absolutely right. But there's a dangerous trend here that we are seeing where the legacy media is now thinking or not even advocating for the censorship of these people like Joe Rogan and other people, maybe even this show, I guess,
Right.
where they're advocating for the censoring of these shows because they are cutting into their viewership and then, of course, cutting into their bottom lines. Now, that is dangerous because these people in the press, which is a free press, is constitutionally mandated. And these people are now calling for censorship. They're articulating it all over the airwaves. Oh, right-wing conspiracy. Oh, this and all that. And they're not seeing that what is going on here is an evolution. Just like you say, it's an evolution or a revolution in the way news is distributed and the way it's being consumed.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of echo chambers that are sort of getting shaken and breaking, I wanted to shift over real quick to Bill Maher's show, and we had an image for that as well. Recently, he had done a show on, I guess the focus of it was, I guess it can almost come down to leaving California. He was really talking about water rights and why, where all the water is going in California, and the fact that it's essentially sort of a crony capitalism thing. A lot of this stuff is headed to almond growers, and that's what he was kind of upset about. But it also had to do with management of the public lands, and the fact that we are having these forest fires every year that are leading to gray skies. And at the end of the show, it's almost like a little bit of lefty fatigue here, because Bill Maher has been a staunch supporter of Democrats. But he says in the end of his piece, he says, look, I've been here a long time. I don't want to go, but I'm not going to breathe ash the rest of my life. You make me happy, California, but I can be happy without you. And that's how he ended the piece. And I thought that, wow, that's pretty powerful, coming from a guy like Bill Maher, the guy who is just, solidly in the left camp, that he's talking about getting out of California. So what did you guys have to think about that? Pretty shocking?
Yes.
Well,
did we lose Brian?
Yeah, I think we lost Brian, or something happened there. Maybe we can get him back. But in the meanwhile, prior to that, he was saying about regulations, either go big or go home, referring to regulations that would, in his mind, potentially.
He gets the solution wrong, but
yeah, exactly.
The problem.
Right, exactly. Instead of complaining for a long time, just complaining about almonds, and because they take so much water compared to other items, like strawberries and other things you can grow. Okay, it's fine. And the almond growers apparently have enough political clout that they can get all this water sent down to them, and the regulatory entities are not paying attention to it, and therefore they are being amiss in that, in his view. And okay, so good points. And in the end, he's only going to leave California, not because they weren't regulating enough, or not because they weren't regulating too little, but because they weren't regulating enough, even though he admitted on the show too that we have more regulations than any other state, which is also true. Yes. So I mean, he and I checked on some of his other stats. Yes, agriculture is 2% of the GDP. Okay, big deal. Anyway, we're up against Knucklehead. Leon, what'd you have to say?
No, I think you said it, Tim. I mean, he's calling himself a libertarian, but look at the solution he proposed for this problem. It's another big government program to solve the government problem that we have out there right now. So it's fine.
And frankly, sorry.
And if he's complaining about all the water that's going to almonds, vast majority of the water, over 70%, goes out to the ocean. Okay. Just goes into the ocean. So maybe he ought to look at that too.
Sure, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is too, we hear this tale of these people leaving California and other blue states, going to other places and not changing their politics. So they literally
Yeah.
are running
Yeah.
from the problems caused by the left, and then they're bringing the same mentality. Just like, Bill Maher is sitting here, he's got the solution completely wrong, but he's talking about leaving California and bringing his ideas with him somewhere else. Well, anyways, it's about time for that time in our show for Knucklehead Noise Control, where we find something silly that some politician has said and or other media personality, and just try and leave on a laugh. And anyways, recently Biden was at a conference of world leaders in Geneva, and during the press conference, he literally said he sort of went off script by revealing that he had a script. He sat there and he says, "Okay," to the press, "I'll take your questions, and as usual, folks, they gave me a list of people I'm going to call." It's just like there's literally, I think he's so out of it, he doesn't even realize, that he's just letting everybody see behind the curtain, and the idea that, look, his handlers have given him a list of approved people, and that's who he's going to talk to. What do you guys have to think about this?
I think the thing you have to remember here, is that this fragile and frail man, half senile man, sat in his basement, virtually did not campaign, but he beat an incumbent president. I want you to remember that, okay? He is more popular than everybody else. 80 million people voted for him, according to what we know to date. This, to me, is a wonder of the world and an amazement beyond all amazement that Biden was able to accomplish this. Who is the people that he referring to when he said they gave him something? He's supposed to be the president of the United States, and they gave him something that he have to say, otherwise he's going to get in trouble. Who's running the presidency if not him? God help us.
Yeah, what can I say? The guy's just he's a box full of rocks when it comes to his brains, and so not only does he not have enough brains to speak for himself, but he doesn't have enough brains to not tell everybody that other people speak for him.
Yes.
So he gets it coming and going, and the guy is a absolute. That's another thing. He's a wonder of the world. All right, I'm wondering how he ever gets up in the morning.
Yeah, it's true. True.
Well, I just can't help but feel like we're just spiraling out of control from these right and left gyrations. Every time it almost seems to get worse and worse and worse. And a lot of people had high hopes for Obama, but he seems to be a lot more style over substance because, quite frankly, a lot of the seeds of where we are today was planted during his administration. But Biden is literally just, there's corruption, there's racism, there's just outright not being coherent,
Yeah. And this man is supposed to be representing us on the world stage. This is an embarrassment. Seriously.
Yeah. Well, we're also up against the clock.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Speaking of things spiraling out of control, we've come to the end of our show, and I'd like to thank our guest Brian Brady for joining us. Unfortunately,